Just reading this book is enough to achieve enlightenment. By Chiang. Chapter 2, Everything in the Universe Possesses Life. The definition of life is that anything that moves is alive, and this definition is an absolute rule. Everything in the universe moves, and this statement is extremely important. You must open your heart to it. From now on, everything you encounter in any time and space will be alive, including minerals and even what you consider the most filthy feces. They all have life because they are composed of atoms. Atoms are made up of quantum particles. Quantum particles are made up of strings. Strings constantly vibrate without stopping day and night. Who are they? They are the source. Therefore, they possess life. If you sincerely absorb the knowledge from this short passage, everything in the universe possesses life, use this knowledge to convince yourself, infuse it into your being, let it reach your spirituality through your physical body, then how can you not treat everything well? Will you still cling to such trivial matters as being vegetarian or not eating meat? Does the dish you eat not have life? Are only animals considered living beings? No. The source does not differentiate between good and evil. Humans created the concept of duality for convenience in spiritual cultivation. When we talk about evil behavior, we mean anything that hinders us from returning home. When we talk about good behavior, we mean anything that helps us return home. The source does not distinguish between good and evil. But after billions of years of souls practicing their life's purpose, the conclusion reached was that doing good leads one back home faster, while doing evil slows down progress. That's how it works. Since there is no distinction between good and evil, there is no right or wrong either. Let me give a simple example. I tell you to sit here. If you turn around backwardly towards Rome, while someone else stands in front of you walking forward also towards Rome. What does this mean? Both are correct. I can go forward or backward. The difference lies in whether I arrive at the destination quickly or slowly. Therefore, any path that helps us return home is good, and any path that obstructs our journey home is evil. The creation of life is controlled by all natural environments. The natural environment of each planet determines the form and direction of evolution. The natural environment not only includes the external conditions of a planet, but also encompasses invisible yet crucial factors such as light, electricity, magnetic fields, gravity, frequencies imposed upon the planet. Earth's life follows this same principle. As the solar system moves through different spaces, it receives influences from different frequencies. These frequencies emanate from the center of various galactic disks. After 2000 AD onwards, our solar system gradually began receiving higher frequency light waves, electricity, and magnetism from our galaxy, which will bring about significant changes in human physical bodies and spiritual energy levels. This is the explanation for why I am imparting the fundamental principles at this time. Why have there been thousands of books on spiritual development in the past 10 or 20 years, when there used to be only a few? Why hadn't you heard of Yiguando or any other paths when you were young? Now they are everywhere because our solar system has entered a high-frequency zone within the Milky Way. The Milky Way contains over 300 billion galaxies with planets and stars. There are stars even larger than our Sun, some exceeding its size by 100-fold or even 1,000-fold. They are densely scattered throughout. The Big Bang created such galaxies, and how many exist in our universe? 300 billion. Our own galaxy contains 300 billion star systems, and the universe as a whole has 300 billion galaxies. It can only increase, never decrease. I just want to tell you that the universe is infinitely vast, so large that it has no boundaries, yet also infinitely small. Scientists have always tried to measure how big the universe is and how small matter can be compared to an electron. In reality, it's meaningless. But scientists need evidence to explain these principles, so if they cannot find evidence, they try not to speak about it too much, otherwise, it becomes metaphysics beyond scientific scope. These discoveries were made by scientists, but only a very small percentage of people, around 0.5% to 1% worldwide, know about them. By learning these things now, you have joined this group. We mentioned earlier that all those galaxies are constantly moving because they seek change. Take our solar system as an example. Its estimated lifespan is around 10 billion years. What does lifespan mean? It means that once time runs out, it will perish. We call this its lifespan ending. The death of the sun isn't like what we imagine as death. Its death follows the law of matter not being destroyed. Matter transforms into energy, and that energy then transmutes into another form of matter. It has its fixed way of reincarnation, which always involves a step, decomposition. No matter how large a celestial body is, even if it's 10 million times larger than the sun, it will eventually disintegrate, some turning into black holes, others being ejected or exploding into several smaller fragments. Therefore, one day in the future when the sun explodes, it will decompose into countless small fragments or transform into what we call gas clouds, invisible air to us. Is air made up of atoms? Hydrogen and oxygen are both atoms. When the sun decomposes into gas clouds, also known as nebulae, numerous gas clouds gather together. When we look through a telescope at them, why do they emit light? It's because each element composing them has its own color. What our astronomical telescopes can see is actually the light emitted by those elements. Elements have fixed colors. For example, if you burn copper and it turns green, we know for sure that it's copper because only copper appears green. If something else comes out red instead, what metal does that correspond to? We use this principle to determine what exists there. Otherwise, how could scientists bring back comets from such far distances to examine whether they contain copper? This method allows for determination. So all kinds of colorful lights in the sky indicate an abundance of elements present there, since every element has its own color. These gas clouds gather within a certain region over time, let's say after 2 billion years, forming planets like Earth, where life emerges along with plants gradually accumulating again. What I want to express is this: after a star-like object similar to our sun decomposes into gas clouds through reincarnation processes, it gives rise to another planet within those gas clouds. On that planet, various forms of life emerge, containing the atoms of the original sun. These elements are formed from the explosion of the sun, breaking down into gas clouds, which then form the Earth. From there, humans, animals, and plants emerge, all containing atoms from the original sun. So do you have elements from the sun in your body? Yes. It may not necessarily be our current sun, it could be from a previous one. Its elements are also present in this table. All elements come together and redistribute themselves. So I have you in me, you have him in you, he has you in him, this is unity. Because we all come from the same atoms. After the creation of the universe's Big Bang, no new atoms are added, these are all the atoms we have. They continuously rearrange and combine before dispersing again. Wherever they disperse to is where they go. Like wind blowing wherever it goes. Gamma rays shooting wherever they shoot. And then recombining once more. So 3 billion years ago we were all one family, 2 billion years ago we were one with them too. The Big Bang created a grand unity while decomposition creates smaller unities. In essence, everything in the universe shares a common origin with you, even if there may be slight differences now or even next lifetime. That's why Jesus and Buddha tell us to love everyone, because every person we encounter is our brother or sister. That's where this saying comes from. After understanding this scientific explanation thoroughly, you will truly comprehend why it's called unity, because everything originates from a single source and possesses similar qualities. I've never seen this stone move or heard it speak, but how can it possess spirit? Let me explain what everything in the universe possesses life means. It means everything has a spirit. Through continuous enrichment and review until your DNA transforms, because that is universal logic. Our science has made tremendous progress over approximately just 100 years. A century ago, an important experiment was conducted by a scientist, double-slit experiment. These experiments were conducted by top physicists, Nobel Prize-level scientists, each possessing the same level of intelligence as Einstein. Einstein gained prestige because he was respected, however, his students surpassed him long ago. This includes quantum mechanics giant Bohr, who spent his entire life opposing Einstein. "I don't believe what you say, and you don't believe what I say." But in the end, it was proven that Bohr's student was correct while Einstein was wrong. Einstein did not believe that everything has a spirit, he believed that it was a contradictory proposition. Einstein had a lifelong belief in God and strongly believed in the existence of God, but his scientific theories did not support the idea that everything has a spirit. Therefore, Einstein was never able to break through because quantum theory defeated him. In the realm of relativity, Einstein made significant achievements in both macro and micro scales. However, when it came to the quantum realm, he never acknowledged the existence of quantum even until his death. Modern scientists are making great strides forward precisely because of the theory of quantum. Many of Einstein's non-quantum discoveries were correct, such as the recent discovery of gravitational waves. Gravitational waves are a very important concept, and Einstein discovered their existence 100 years ago, although at that time he could not prove it until recently when scientists finally confirmed their existence. About 100 years ago, there was a scientist who conducted an experiment. We just mentioned about quantum. Particles smaller than atoms are called quanta or particles for short. Quantum experiments use electrons, photons or neutrons as test subjects. This scientist used photons for his experiment. He placed a screen on the wall with a piece of paper in front of it and made 2 holes on the paper. Then he emitted photons from in front of the paper using something like a gun so that they would pass through one slit and hit the screen behind it. The scientist wanted to investigate which slit on the paper did each photon go through before hitting the screen. So he conducted this experiment, which is very important. The first time this scientist conducted this experiment, he thought to himself, "This photon is indeed a particle. What characteristics does particles have? If something has shape, then we call it particles, whether circular or spherical or square-shaped can all be considered as particles." He thought inside his mind that this experiment was meant to prove that photons are particles. What is a photon? The light we see is composed of photons. In that era, our scientists believed that light was made up of particles. Why did this scientist discover another world? One day after he finished the experiment, which was automated and emitted 1 photon every 30 seconds, he observed for several days and nights, but the results were always the same. So in the end, he thought to himself, light is indeed a particle because when I emit this photon and it passes through slit number 1, it will hit the screen behind slit number 1. One day after work, when he finished his experiment and feeling tired, he forgot to turn off the machine and left the laboratory to go home. What phenomenon did he observe when he came back on the next day? The photons that were emitted filled up completely behind the screen. He was shocked by this discovery. He fainted and was stunned. How could this happen? Clearly there were only 2 slits on the paper, so when photons passed through these 2 slits they should have created only 2 lines on the screen. How come it filled up completely behind? When this scientist leaves, what remains? Only the existence of the source. The scientist has left, only the existence of the source remains. Photons passing through these 2 slits are spread out on the screen behind them. How does this phenomenon occur? He further forms a team to explore this truth. How is this phenomenon formed and what is its conclusion? In recent years, scientific experiments have proven the conclusion that quantum has consciousness. Scientists not only use photons but also all quantum particles to conduct experiments, and the results show that the phenomenon of spreading across the screen is consistent. When scientists observe the experiment in person, there are 2 lines as a result. However, when they leave and only the source remains, the result becomes a full screen spread. Why? When scientists observe it personally, photons must choose 1 slit to pass through, which creates 2 lines. But when scientists are absent and machines perform it themselves, with only the source remaining present, a full screen spread occurs. Why does this happen? It's because when photons run into slits, they instantly split into two photons, one becomes two simultaneously passing through both slits. After passing through these slits, they instantly become 4 or 5 or 6 photons hitting on the screen. You give me 2 slits but I want both of them, so I become 2. Once I pass through those slits there's no longer any gap between paper and screen anymore, right? Bam! It's all me. You give me 2 slits so I can only go through those 2 slits initially. But after going through them, there are no more restrictions or doors, I am free. Bam! It's all me now. At this point, why do quantum particles or photons behave like this? This raises issues related to consciousness, because whether photons form 2 lines on screens or fill up screens depends solely on whether an observer is present or not. If we reverse the result, for photons to fill up the screen, doesn't it mean that there must be a photon in every single spot? Scientists further observe photons and discover that for photons to exhibit such phenomena, when they pass through these holes, they transform into a bunch of clones and become wave-like energy, transforming from particle-like to wave-like. Aren't water waves full? They also become full after passing through. If I roll a stone over, isn't there only one stone? When water waves pass by, isn't this entire area filled with water waves? When photons pass through these slits, they transform from particle-like to wave-like. Scientists are most unwilling to admit consciousness because it cannot be proven scientifically. Everything can be proven using science, but how do you prove consciousness? The person conducting this experiment finally explained it successfully, allowing everyone to tacitly accept it, using the concept of consciousness. In other words, this quantum knows whether someone is observing it at the moment before or simultaneously passing through this slit. If no one is watching, bam! It becomes a curtain that fills up densely. When scientists are present and observe, the result is just 2 lines. Scientists simply don't believe until the end. How do they conduct the final experiment? Alright. I stand outside while using surveillance instead of a person, placing a camera here for scientists to watch from outside. When the camera comes on, the quantum still passes through both slits and there are still 2 lines behind. Before scientists set limitations on these results, there is 100% possibility for quantum. What does that mean? Infinite possibilities. The difference in this experiment lies in whether someone is monitoring or not, including when you use a monitor to observe. It's just like having someone present at the scene. But as soon as observers remove themselves, it fills up with an entire curtain. In other words, after this quantum passes through this slit, it transforms into wave-like energy, 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes infinite. Student question: how does quantum know if someone installs a surveillance camera? Teacher Chiang answers: why does quantum know? So we need to explain in this experiment what quantum has spiritual existence. That means even small particles like electrons, which are the smallest units of matter, have consciousness too. Without consciousness, how would they know if you're there or not? What is consciousness anyway? Spirituality, isn't that called consciousness? So 3,000 years ago Laozi told us all things have spirits, but why couldn't he explain why? He couldn't conduct any experiments either, but Laozi observed this phenomenon and could perceive that those things have consciousness. What is the thought of a stone? The only thought a stone has is waiting. Waiting. Boom. Destruction, where does it go after billions of years? It goes to Director Luo's body, its only consciousness is waiting. Human consciousness will be more advanced, various types of consciousness will emerge. From this quantum double-slit experiment, consciousness arises. In my book, The Secret Notes of Spiritual Enlightenment Process, published by Shangshu and Culture in Section 2, it talks about how we live in an illusion. That section mentions Max Planck, the inventor of quantum physics and Albert Einstein's doctoral advisor. He was a German physicist who invented quantum theory. He conducted lifelong experiments related to quantum and finally told us what I wrote in my book: behind all matter lies invisible wisdom, infinite wisdom. Consciousness controls matter. What is that infinite, boundless wisdom? It is the source itself. Student question: so you mean electrons have consciousness? Teacher Chiang's answer: all quantum particles have consciousness, not just electrons. Student question: so does that mean matter also has life? Teacher Chiang's answer: yes. Didn't you just ask me about everything has a spirit? How do you explain it? No one has ever explained it like this before, maybe you've never heard of it. Student question: quantum mechanics seems to be saying that when we look at something, as long as we have the idea of that thing in our mind, then that thing exists. When we don't have the idea of that thing in our mind, then that thing doesn't exist. Whether that thing exists or not is determined by us. Teacher Chiang's answer: yes. That's why I don't explain metaphysics. For example, if Gautama Buddha said a certain metaphysical sentence, there will be 101 different interpretations from 100 teachers. But what I'm telling you is only one interpretation. This person's theory won the Nobel Prize in Physics. If you say he is wrong, it means the entire physics community is wrong. But if it really is wrong, then today you won't be able to use magnetic resonance imaging when going to the hospital, because MRI was invented based on quantum physics principles. Even traffic lights are based on quantum mechanics. Over 40% of electronic components in our phones today are made using scientific principles derived from quantum mechanics. Everything has a spirit appears every day in our lives, but only 0.05% of people worldwide know about it, and now you're joining this group too. Everything has a spirit. We may not use this spirit directly, but knowing that it exists allows me to utilize this phenomenon, and create something new for your use. Why doesn't this spirit run away? Because spirits can vary in level. When they are electrons, they are at their lowest level with only two choices, to be, or not to be, which means conscious or unconscious, positive or negative. When billions and trillions of electrons gather together, they become you, and this spirit becomes powerful. Today it wants to drink coffee, tomorrow it wants to eat steak, its choices increase. So this scientific experiment is meant to explain everything has a spirit. Everything is composed of atoms, and atoms are composed of quantum particles. Scientific experiments now confirm that even the smallest quantum particles have consciousness, so larger substances made up of these quantum particles naturally have more consciousness. Therefore, life only differs in levels, spirituality only differs in levels, consciousness only differs in levels. Do you understand the meaning of everything has a spirit? Completely understood and will never forget for a lifetime. After scientists discovered this principle and were shocked by it, they began inventing things and engaging in industrial production. We are now living with the benefits after this experimental discovery, otherwise technology would not progress so quickly. After breaking through limitations and discovering new worlds and truths, it turns out that all quantum particles have spirits, they all exist consciously. Student question: does a photon remain as a point when it passes through a point, even if influenced by human consciousness? Teacher Chiang's answer: the initial belief of the scientists conducting this experiment was that a photon is a particle. What is a particle? It's something made up of individual units. So when I am present, my consciousness tells me that what I want to see is individual particles. Therefore, when photons pass through, they appear as individual particles. When there is no presence or influence of anything in the space that can affect quantum consciousness during the experiment, what does this quantum become? I am free, it becomes the source. At that moment, the quantum transforms into its true essence. This experiment has been conducted by thousands of top physicists, and has been discussed at numerous conferences, until finally accepting that photons possess consciousness. Why do I explain this? It happens to be related to our spiritual growth, but within the realm of spiritual growth, it's just child's play. After 100 years of struggle, scientists have concluded that quantum possesses consciousness. In other words, consciousness can manifest any possibility you desire with 100% certainty. That's why I often tell you to let go of worries. It's based on this principle. If you don't infuse your consciousness into an atom, then matter won't form, it won't exist. If you don't infuse your consciousness into negative people or things, they will stay away from you. Because what are they? Infinite possibilities. They are either in a state beyond particles or energy waves. Because energy waves exist everywhere simultaneously, they represent infinite potential states. When I think about something specific regarding them, photons, they appear in a certain material state, because I want them to be like that. Unfortunately for us humans in 3D reality levels with limited conscious energy capacity, compared to an 80-year-old monk who has practiced for 80 years, his energy is stronger because he has accumulated it for 80 years. He can meditate and levitate, but that's the extent of his abilities. He constantly thinks, I want to levitate, and after thinking about it for 80 years, he actually does levitate. It becomes a common occurrence. So before you can prove your ideas, accept them first, because by accepting the concepts of Nobel Prize-winning physicists, we elevate our wisdom to the same level as theirs.